It's a different way of looking at things. And sure enough, if you can change the diet, if you can change the workout training program, you can get people to burn so much fat and save so much of that glycogen that they never really seem to bond.
Howdy, everybody, and welcome to episode 169 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast, your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym. Casey Ruff and I met a little over a week ago at Carnivore-a-thon. He is a certified personal trainer since 2007, operating a metabolic testing program for a large gym, overseeing 13 programs in the Western United States, before shifting his professional focus to researching and acquiring certifications in low-carbohydrate lifestyles, equipping himself to help thousands of clients achieve their specific health and fitness goals through movement, lifestyle management, and proper diet. Not unlike Taylor and myself, Casey and his wife Bethany also went all in with online coaching. Together with their combined list of certifications and experience, they launched Boundless Body LLC. Casey hosts two podcasts, Boundless Body Radio LLC and the How to Make a podcast. In his free time, he likes to cycle, paddleboard, and play hockey. Casey, welcome to the show. Is it okay if we pray before we get started, sir?
Absolutely.
All right. So check this out. 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20 says, "Do you not know that your body is a sanctuary of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body." Dear God, Master of the universe, Casey and I acknowledge that our bodies are a gift, and we ask for your blessing upon this conversation that it may prove fruitful in an effort to improve the health of those listening in. Amen.
Amen.
Casey, for those that don't know you, what got you into personal training in the first place, man?
Oh, man, it's absolutely ridiculous. I studied architecture in college. How did I get into personal training? It's so bizarre. So basically, I've been interested in fitness for a lot of my life. I was kind of a chubby kid growing up, but I loved ice hockey. I eventually got into racing road bikes and mountain bikes, and I really enjoyed that. And it was one off season when I was attending college that I joined a local corporate gym here to have a place to train in the off season. And I noticed that the personal trainers were using heart rate monitors, which I had been using for a long time. And I just observing them, I really enjoyed how they would interact with their clients, how they would show them different exercises and prescribe different things. And it looked like fun. It looked like a really good time. And again, they were using heart rate monitors, which I found very appealing and had already been doing for a very long time. And so I went into the personal trainer manager's office and asked what it would be like to get a job as a personal trainer. He told me about an online certification that I could go get, which I did. It took a few months to study and pass a test. Once I did, I was hired on to that gym and was really fortunate to make a career out of personal training. A lot of personal trainers, as you well know, end up dropping out and, selling medical devices and make tons of money and that kind of thing. And, I've been really fortunate to be able to turn this into a career that I've been doing for now over 16 years. Over the 16 years, a lot of, changing my mind and learning and unlearning and all kinds of things I thought were true are probably not as true as I wanted to believe. But yeah, it's been a really fun journey. And it's something that I wake up every day with energy. I just love it. I love what I do. I don't ever plan on retiring from this. This is really fun. And I love helping my people and helping to get that message out to people. So yeah, that's how I got into personal training.
That's beautiful. You had a spectacular speech at Carnivore-a-thon, your presentation. Is it okay if I ask if you could elaborate on a couple of the things that you touched on?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, if people are watching and they want to see some of the slides I presented, I'm happy to pull those up as well. There was a really fun opportunity that both you and I were able to be included on. And so, yeah, I would love to talk about any of that stuff. Basically, a lot of the things that I learned by using a metabolic cart through my career.
Awesome. So most of our listeners are working out. So maybe the slideshow may not be the best idea now, but I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes because if you are listening, you definitely do need to go check it out. As a matter of fact, he and I both talked back to back. So the link that I am putting in the show notes, that's going to have Casey, me, Sean Baker, Jonathan Griffiths. Was Dr. Chafee the same day? I can't even remember. Bart K was after us. I know that.
I think he was the same day, but I think he was technically session 1, and I believe we were on session 2.
Okay. I mean, really, you should just go listen to all the speakers because I don't think that there was a bad one. They were all good.
They were good. Yeah, they did a good job.
Yeah. So the 80-20 rule, you said something about how 80% of your training should be done in zone 1 and zone 2. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. And so to kind of kick off this conversation, what we're talking about is heart rate zones. I was working at the time, like I said, on a metabolic cart, which could validate how somebody was burning their calories, how many calories they would burn in different heart rate zones, and where the calories would come from, if they would burn more fat or more carbohydrates. And that in turn, for people who are active, who are doing exercise, would validate heart rate zones 1 through 5. We used a system where we had 5 different heart rate zones that we would kind of validate based on certain breathing metrics. One of the big markers that we would measure is called aerobic base, which means where is your basically like maximum efficiency or your maximum fat burning point. We would also measure something that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, which is anaerobic threshold. Where do you cross the threshold of being able to control your breathing before it becomes like really uncontrolled and almost like panting, where you can't really complete a full sentence without stopping to breathe between every breath. It's very directly correlated to a lactic threshold. They're not the same, but they happen at about the same time. So essentially it's about the same thing. And so, yeah, we would validate these 5 different heart rate zones. And so this really applies for people who are doing primarily cardiovascular exercise. I think you and I have come to a certain understanding of the value of cardiovascular exercise over the course of the career of our careers. I mentioned that I like to cycle. I like to ride my mountain bike. I still like to do those things, but I don't look at that as like a cardiovascular benefit. You know what I mean? I do it because I love it and I really enjoy it. And if you told me, you know, if I did it, I would be clobbered by a truck and get killed or something, I would still probably do it because I really enjoy it. But I don't see tons and tons of value of doing chronic cardio the way I recommended for so long and for so many people, due to the fact that it, for the most part, will cause people to be efficient with their calories, which sounds like a good thing. And it is a good thing if you are interested in cardiovascular activities. Like if you're running a marathon or, you know, you're cycling 100 miles, you're doing triathlon, you do want to be efficient. You want to use the least amount of calories to get from point A to point B, however long you're going. So that efficiency is a really, really good thing. The problem is most people want to burn fat. They want to lose fat. So creating efficiency just means that you are making yourself burn less and less and less calories by doing these activities. And an example I would give is like, if you told me to run down the street right now, like I would burn a lot of calories, dude. Like I don't run. So I would be completely inefficient. My arms would be flailing. I'd probably have a terrible gait. It's not something I practice. So I wouldn't be efficient. I would be inefficient. Now, if I kept running down the street every single day for 6 months, at the end of 6 months, I would be much more efficient. I'd have a nice gait. I had a nice arm swing. I would be able to do that without raising my heart rate nearly as much. So I've created efficiency in that scenario. But the problem is efficiency means you're burning less calories. And that's what happens when people do too much cardio, especially if they're trying to do it for weight loss. It ends up really backfiring on people. So going back to the original question about the heart rate zones 1 through 5, anybody who wants to do some type of cardio, and I think some, again, is fine. They really want to be thinking about the intensity of their exercise and in the context of those heart rate zones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and zones 1 and 2 being the lowest zones, either like a zone 1, which is more like a recovery, kind of a walk. It's like maybe like a 4 or possibly a 5 out of 10 for difficulty, if you were to ask yourself how difficult that activity was. A zone 2, classically like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 for difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10. Those are the zones where you literally burn the most fat and burn the least amount of carbohydrates. Therefore, most people should focus most of their exercise in those 2 particular zones and only reserve a small amount of their week, that 20% or less. For a lot of people, it should be less than even that, for, you know, what people think of as like high intensity intervals, jacking your heart rate up really high, recovering back down. You and I both know ice hockey is a really great way to do that. You do a shift for a minute or 2, you go pretty much all out, then you go back to your bench, talk smack with your boys for 4 or 5 minutes and kind of recover, and you repeat that for the length of a game. You really don't want to be doing that very often. And the pattern that I really saw was way too many people doing
I'll tell my coach that next time I'm on the ice for more than 2 minutes. I'll just be like, whoa, this is too much. I'm in zone 3 for too long. This isn't okay, coach.
Dude, the guys I skate around with will take like 20 and 30-minute shifts. So we would welcome that. That's great. So yeah, anyway, what the pattern that I noticed that a lot of people would get into is they get fixated on this like thing that like calories are this number that needs to be hit. And I see it on the treadmill and it shows me how many I've burned and I want to lose fat. So let me burn tons of calories. So jump on a treadmill, go as hard as you can steadily for like 45 minutes until it says you burn 500 calories. You're a hot, sweaty mess. You didn't help yourself out. You burned calories. That is not the same as burning fat. That is overtraining. And that will put people in a really, really bad spot and make their bodies hoard calories and make their carbohydrate cravings go up. And I noticed it all the time. So when we say 80-20 as a general rule, we just mean that 80% or more of your time moving should be in a lower heart rate zone where you're actually optimizing fat burning.
Wow. That is a beautiful explanation of how that works. Thanks for that. And it's hard using a metric that doesn't even apply to the human body and trying to treat it like it's gospel and going, okay, I'm eating this amount of calories, which you can't even do. You can't even eat calories. I guess technically speaking, we can expend calories because it's a heat measurement, but the model just doesn't work. Even following it might get you to where you want to be weight wise temporarily, but look at the big picture. What did that just do to your hormones? What did that just do to your mentality with food? Basically, would you agree that doing the hot, sweaty cardio for an hour and a half at a time, like I did every single day for my last shows before I realized that what that was doing to my body and how that was a terrible idea? do you think that that's really just out training a bad diet, basically?
I think that's a big part of it. And you're right. Like when we started to focus on calories as a unit that we could measure, and then we could measure it in our food, and we kind of made those correlations, we just kind of ran it down the wrong path and made that our focus when really that should never have been our focus. It's nice that you have things that you can measure, like that's good, but that doesn't really tell you anything. It's almost like measuring cholesterol. Like when we only knew to measure cholesterol, any of that, but it was something that we could track. We could track cholesterol, and we started to have these ideas like, okay, people get heart attacks and we cut them open, we see cholesterol, so let's just make everybody's cholesterol lowered. Like that's a really simplistic idea, and the calories in, calories out thing is kind of the same thing. Like if our body's metabolisms were fixed, if nothing would change, if it was a simple machine, meaning like you take a toaster, you put bread in, and you get toast out every single time. And it doesn't matter what kind of bread it is. The toaster operates the same way every time. The calories might actually work. That might be a good long-term solution for somebody, because you could just, do the math and stick with that. And that it would always work. The problem is our bodies respond to the stimulus that we give it. And so if we tell our body that we're reducing our calories, we're not getting enough in our food, and we're burning tons of calories, running around all over the place, the body says, okay, well, it's famine mode. We're in starvation time. So let's just kind of hoard everything. Let's lower the metabolic rate. Let's slow everything down. Let's preserve, the functions that keep this human alive. But other than that, like hair quality, we don't need that. Nail, skin quality, we don't need any of that. Body temperature can reduce. And in that state, your body is experiencing all these cravings because you've been burning so many calories, and so many of those calories came from carbohydrates anyway, which you don't have very many of to begin with. And so people feel like they're doing so much work running themselves into the ground, and they never really get long-term results because that's not how it works. You're lowering your metabolic rate. If you understood that, you would change the way you would do things and work with that system to create inefficiency so that your body is burning lots of calories, and also teach it to burn its calories from fat. So yeah, it's a bummer, and it sucks. I hate it every single day when I see the same size and shaped people running by me by the lake. I know they're trying to lose weight and lose fat, and they're huffing and puffing and running the same route every single day. Dude, their bodies do not change. They look the same. It might be slightly smaller one month or slightly bigger the next month, but the body is the same. And I look at you as somebody who doesn't do a ton of cardio at all. If you have a hockey game or two or whatever, run around with kids, like that's one thing. Dude, you're jacked. You don't need to do tons of cardio to get jacked. You're not spending all that time on the Stairmasters and ellipticals and treadmills like we used to in the past. So yeah, I totally agree.
Thanks. Yeah, doing cardio makes it hard to get jacked. It eats away at your muscle mass too.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to efficiency. Like if you want to be efficient, then you really don't want a ton of muscle. Muscle is inefficient on the body. It burns calories for you all the time. And your body, unless it really needs the muscle for some purpose, it's not just going to go out and just spontaneously build tons more muscle than it absolutely needs, which is why strength training is so important and really pushing yourself to a deep level of fatigue when you strength train to create a signal to send to your body that says, wow, this human is not strong enough. We don't have a choice now. We have to shuttle resources over to building muscle, strengthening bones, strengthening the connective tissue. Like all of those things have to happen and they require energy to be able to do that. And so the inefficiency from the strength training will actually give most people way more benefit for what they think they want in the end anyway.
100%. Yeah. Doing some amounts of cardio here and there. Do you believe that that's beneficial to recovery? I have some clients to where I've taken cardio completely out of their workout plans, and they actually asked for it back because they're like, I feel like I can actually recover better on my off days if I do 10 or 15 minutes of bike sprints. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I agree 100%. It's really even interesting. Like when we go back and try to figure out when did we even call what we call quote unquote cardio? Why did we call it cardio when it's aerobic exercise? It's kind of a different thing. And, back in the 70s, we just kind of assumed that doing, again, what we called quote unquote cardio was really good for the heart. And I don't know that there's a lot of really good research that even says that. But yeah, I think that the way I like to present it is I want people to move. I want you to have movement integrated into your life. What does that look like? You know what? I don't know. What do you like to do? What do you enjoy? What do your kids like to do? Do you walk? Like walking is one of my favorite things. I try to get several miles in every day as I'm preparing for podcasts or, doing some admin work or reaching out to somebody on my phone. I think walking is amazing. Paddleboarding for me is an awesome way to do that. When I ride, like most of the time it's kind of flat. I live in Salt Lake City, so there's lots of hills. So my heart rate is going to be elevated from time to time. But I think incorporating movement as much as you like is great. And I do think it probably can help for recovery depending on what you do. And it might come down to you kind of experimenting with a few things to find out what you like, what works, what doesn't work. But yeah, I think that's totally fine. What you're describing is very, very different than that 45 minutes to an hour on the treadmill, sweating your brains out, breathing heavily at a steady state. Those two things are vastly different.
Totally. Yeah. I agree. It makes no sense to spend 90 minutes on the stair mill and then completely trash your body. You're okay. Yeah. You burn some fat. You probably burn mostly glycogen if your heart rate was up too high for too long. And now what? Now you're a dead weight the entire rest of the day. And that's now right. You're moving less. And so your body always overcompensates for it on the back end.
Very well explained there. Yeah, that's a great way to explain it.
How do you calculate your heart rate?
Another really great question. So it's a cool time. Most people, already have like Apple Watches that have really, I have to say, like really incredible heart rate. Metabolic heart to measure metabolism. A lot of people who had Apple Watches that had the integrated heart rate monitor, those worked really well. I just have a simple strap that uses an optical light that just sits on my arm. I use that. I don't do the same kind of heart rate training that I used to, so I don't pay attention to the same level of detail. I also don't really need to. I'm kind of at my fitness goals already. I'm not competing for any reason. If I was, I probably would incorporate a lot more of that. But yeah, most people can find really inexpensive devices that can track their heart rate. Some of them send an outboard signal to another device, like maybe your phone or a bike computer or a pedometer of some kind. And it's a nice way to measure your intensity. And what I would say is, like, without knowing your heart rate zones, a heart rate monitor will tell you your speed without telling you what the speed limit is. Like the testing, knowing where your heart rate zones are, that's kind of knowing the speed limit and where your numbers are and where you need to be. Heart rate is just telling you what your body is doing. It's even different than numbers that we talk about, like in cycling. A really big number is power. So if I tell you how fast I'm going, that doesn't really tell you that much about where am I? Am I going downhill with a tailwind? Am I going uphill with a headwind? Like if I just tell you what my speed is, it's not a really good metric to let you know what my training is like. Power is something that is a tangible number that tells you exactly what I am doing for a workload. When I tell you I'm at 250 watts, you know that 250 watts are being produced. It doesn't matter whether it's uphill, downhill, wind conditions. That's the power output. That is what my body is doing. Heart rate, conversely, is how my body is responding to my output. So it can be variable and change day to day, but it's important to kind of know that like there's the numbers and things you can track that tell you exactly what you're doing. And there's other things that tell you how your body is responding. So all of it is valid. It's all good data. And for, my athletes who compete, it's something that we track, and we track that with, expensive power meters with their heart rates. And that gives us a lot of information. But yeah, so tracking heart rate is fairly easy for people that want to do it. It's pretty easy to find inexpensive heart rate monitors that are fairly accurate these days.
For sure. Are you wearing a wedding ring, or is that an Oura ring?
It's a wedding ring.
Okay.
Do you have an Oura ring?
Yeah, I guess you could call this both. Here again, my clients got me into it. I got a few that are a fan, but I've been a huge fan lately. It's real helpful in sleep tracking too. Tells me what kind of quality sleep I'm getting. But yeah, apparently throughout the day, today's average, I've been 48 beats per minute. So I guess I've been lazy, huh?
Can I be the podcast host for a second?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Has that practically helped you with things like your sleep? Like, have you found that tracker to be a useful tool?
I'm still pretty new to it. What it has done is it's been like a game, because I've had a bad habit of falling asleep on the couch and not actually making it to bed, just because I'm just like you, bro. I mean, I work myself until I can't think anymore, and then that's when the day's done.
That's what I do.
Yeah, when the brain stops working, that's the time to go to bed, and you're done for the day.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of embarrassing, but it's got me. I'm like, you know what? No, I don't want to be that guy 5 years from marriage, 5 years further into my marriage right now. That'll be 15 years into marriage and not having been sleeping in the same bed. So it's been a lifestyle change in a positive direction. And it's also been a game that's been helping me to actually track my sleep better too. Good. And so, yeah, I'll average like my score. If I fall asleep on the couch, it'll be like around 70 to 80. But if I go to bed and cuddle with my wife and everything, I'll be 95.
Nice. Okay. So that is something that's driving behavior that's actually giving you your desired outcome. I really like that. Where I get a little hung up on trackers is sleep is a really good example. Like measuring sleep, you actually can't measure sleep. Like there's no way to measure sleep or not. You measure proxies that tell you about your sleep. And I've noticed with certain trackers, maybe not the Oura Ring, but other ones would say like, oh, you got a terrible night's sleep. And somebody might say, well, I thought I got a really good night's sleep. Whatever it was measuring said I didn't. Now they're stressed out about having not gotten good sleep. And it doesn't lead them down like the right path of things to do to improve, like behaviors, like said, for better outcomes. And so I think that's a really fair and valid response from you, is like, no, this is driving behavior that's then giving me a better quality of life. And that is a positive thing. And so that's the way I would want people to use trackers.
Yep, exactly. Just like body fat testing, you can't treat it as gospel. Like there's no body fat tester that is 100% accurate, not even close. But knowing that you're going to test your body fat in a week, that's probably going to hold you more accountable to diet. Like that's going to be the decision to where when you go to a restaurant, you're going to order the steak and not the stuff. Not
if you're consistent with your tracker, you might be able to find some directionality. If nothing else, it will tell you if you're 5 pounds of fat heavier or lighter. It's not so much like one measurement to the next that's really valuable. It's kind of those long-term trends, as long as you're being consistent with things. So yeah, I think that's a good example.
Totally. Can you talk on why you should stay around 5 RPE, rate of perceived effort, in your training?
Yeah. So, again, rate of perceived exertion, RPE, the scale that I like to use is 1 to 10. There's several different scales out there. I think they're more confusing. Like there's one that's like 6 through 20, but like, you're like anything like 1 through 6 is like basically all nothing anyway. So it's kind of confusing. I don't know why they use that scale. I like it just asking yourself very simply, how do I feel on a scale of 1 to 10? If 1 is I'm sitting on the couch watching Drive to Survive Formula One on Netflix, a number 10 is like I'm running from a bear. It's the hardest I could possibly work. 5 puts that like right in the middle. And again, when I was using metabolic carts to measure people's,
I don't know, bro. Like if there's a bear chasing me, I could get to 11, I bet.
You could probably get to 11, and it depends. Like if somebody's next to you, like you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the person next to you. So that might be a little help. If you're running with me, we already learned I'm a terrible runner. So, so as we were doing these assessments and we were evaluating, where heart rate burns were and where people could maximize not just calorie burns, but the amount of fat that they were burning. Again, most people care about fat loss. They want to burn the maximum amount of fat. They say they want to lose weight. They're telling you they want to lose fat. You do want to hang on to, lean muscle mass as much as possible. So you want all the fat gone. So we would ask people as we were stepping up the intensity of these workouts. It might be a running test or a walking test up a hill. It might be a test on a bike where we're slowly like turning the screws up and making it a little bit harder. At the end of each stage, a 2-minute stage of increase in the workload, we would ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? We would record it so that we could say like, this is a subjective measure that is now telling us how this person thinks on this day right now, how hard they think they're working. And so it's valuable. It's not an objective number, but it's a valuable question to ask. And I would say 90% of the time, that 5 out of 10 for difficulty correlated almost perfectly with where somebody would be burning a maximal amount of fat. So that might be, you and I just kind of screwing around on the ice, skating around, maybe passing the puck back and forth, but we're not skating a shift where we're all out for that minute or 2 minutes. That might be for some people walking. For some people, that might be a light trot. It's an intensity that I would describe like you could have a conversation. You're moving, you're working, you're definitely getting a light sweat going maybe, but it's, kind of maintainable. You can do it for 45 minutes or an hour and, it's something, but it's not an overexertion, if that makes sense. That is for most people where they maximize their fat burn. And so if you don't have a heart rate monitor, if you don't have a way to measure some of these things that's a little bit too complicated or price prohibitive for you, asking yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 is a really easy way to make sure that you're working out a proper amount and in the right intensity if you choose to do more of that movement or cardio type exercise. You want to really keep your heart rate and intensity right around a 5 out of 10.
Yeah. Wow. Beautifully explained. Thanks so much for that. You being a cyclist, so our whole family is into cycling, actually. Your explanation of the advantages of cycling as a fat adapted athlete was spectacular at Carnivore-a-thon. Can you explain to our audience why this makes more sense than carb loading if you're going to do an endurance sport like marathon running, bike, cycling, triathlon? Why would it make more sense to be fat adapted?
Yeah, great question. This was such a game changer in my own cycling career. I wanted to find slides, but I couldn't find the presentation. We were given a presentation back in like 2005 or 2006 where a dietitian came in to our bike shop and talked to all the people on the cycling team. And it recommended like hundreds of grams of carbohydrates and how to time your oatmeal with your bananas and what you do in the rides and how often you eat after the rides and how many carbohydrates are in each one, and how to keep your fat really low. And that's just what you did, right? That's what everybody knows in endurance sport is like you need a lot of carbohydrates because you're working in an carbohydrate in the bodies. It's a finite, very limited number that the body has a capacity to store. You cannot store endless amounts of carbohydrates. You have very limited storage capacity. You can't have a very high amount in your blood right off the bat. Like you have about a teaspoon of sugar circulating in your blood. That's a minuscule amount for 5 liters of blood. That's almost nothing. The only other place where you can store carbohydrates is going to be in the liver or in the muscles for the most part. And so that's going to be limited by your muscle mass. Like you are going to be able to store more carbohydrates than I would have capacity to because you have more muscle mass than I do. Like that's clear for anybody that's watching this, but that's still a very small and finite number. And so I think most people can relate at some point in their lives. Maybe they did a workout that was too hard. They didn't eat before. They worked out at a really high level. Maybe it was an endurance event. Like, you did a 10K or half marathon, or you went on a long bike ride. Maybe it was a competitive event. And if so, you would absolutely be familiar with the feeling of what we call bonking. And it's this like, you have energy, you have energy, you have energy, your energy's gone. Like it's really, really sudden. It's not that much different to your car running out of gas. And metaphorically speaking, that's really not that much different to what happens in the body. It's like you have these carbohydrates. If you're working at a high level, you're burning them at an accelerated rate, which means they're running out. Like you're using them and they're going away. And at some point, they're going to be really, really low to zero. And at that point, like your body says, okay, we don't have the fuel for this particular activity. Now, that is kind of a shame because fat stores so much differently than carbohydrate stores. I gave an example in that presentation of a woman who is relatively lean, but based on her weight and her body fat percentage, we could calculate how many pounds of fat mass that she had on her body, which you could then multiply by how many grams of carbohydrate are in a pound of fat, which will tell you the number of calories that you store from fat. And essentially, again, this lady who is fairly lean showed that she could only store about 1,500 calories of carbohydrate, so not very much, maybe enough to fuel hard exercise for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. But even as a lean woman, she had over 100,000 calories of fat that she could store. And that's what our bodies do. Like we store fat extremely effectively. Our species is very well adapted to storing fat and using it as energy in times when we didn't have lots of food and lots of carbohydrates around to feed ourselves. Some of the studies in the 1960s and 70s by Dr. George Cahill showed this perfectly. Like you could fast people for like 40 days and their metabolism eventually would switch from burning carbohydrates to burning more fats and using ketone bodies to fuel different tissues. Really beautiful, elegant studies that you can never really do again that I think illustrate the point so much that you can teach yourself to burn carbohydrates by working really, really hard all the time and then eating tons and tons of carbohydrates to try to stay on top of the carbohydrates that you are burning through. That leads to lots of like gut dysbiosis. And most, endurance athletes talk about how like their gut always hurts them, or they, have terrible bouts of diarrhea during events because they're not digesting all these carbohydrates. Like you're asking your body to choose between your rest and digest mode or your fight or flight mode as you're exercising and trying to digest all these carbohydrates. It's just a pain. And it's a losing battle. At some point, you're going to run out of carbohydrates. You just can't digest enough to stay on top of that. So what if you just taught yourself to run on the 110,000 calories that is stored from fat versus running so much from the 1,500 calories stored from carbohydrates and glycogen? And so it's a different way of looking at things. And sure enough, if you can change the diet, if you can change the workout training program, you can get people to burn so much fat and save so much of that glycogen that they never really seem to bonk. So like I would always experience that. Like our cycling team has a gas station that's exactly an hour and a half away into this ride where everybody has to stop and everybody's refilling their bottles with Gatorade. And I used to eat those, those grandma sycamore cookies that come in a 2-pack. It was like the double chocolate ones. You can find them in gas stations.
Oh, yeah.
2 of those.
The shelf life is insane on those. And how are they so good like 5 years later still?
So good. They're moist and everything. Yeah, they're amazing. Never mind what they put in them to have that kind of shelf life. But like I would need those things. I would need all the goos and the gels and all the sugary water. Dude, if I go on a bike ride now, I don't even carry a water bottle. It doesn't matter whether it's 4 p.m, 9 a.m. You don't, when you're running on, this woman's like 110,000 calories of fat, when you're using fat as fuel, that fuel is with you. Like it's strapped on your body. You probably don't like it anyway. Why not burn it at an accelerated rate? Have that be your energy and basically be like, you're plugging in your life's energy into energy that's always present and always there. And this is part of the reason why I found low carbohydrate diets to begin with, is because it was changing people's metabolic rates, whether they were trying to lose fat and lose weight, or whether they were trying to improve their performance in biking events. It's such a game changer. You just have this like even, steady, perfect energy all the time. And, in the few times that your body needs an extra amount of carbohydrates, rely on gluconeogenesis, a process that basically makes exactly the amount of carbohydrates that you need at any given time. I think the evidence is quite clear that that's the way your body likes to do it anyway. It just gives you exactly the right amount when you need that process to kick in. Why not do that? It's such a game changer.
100%. Have you noticed that? Can you relate to it being easier to skip a meal if you're fat adapted than if you're on a high carbohydrate diet? Like say you've been fasted for like 20 hours and you're used to 1 or 2 meals a day, you're at that point where you would normally eat, is it like easy to skip it, or does that meal have to happen?
No, it's so easy. I would say, like, for a lot of my carnivore journey, I was doing OMAD for quite a while, just doing a dinner. I think I did it for too long and was over fasting daily and just not getting enough nutrients in the times that I was eating. I was a little bit limited by such a tight eating window with one meal that I probably was not getting enough protein. For myself. And so I started to recognize that, yeah, my hands are feeling a little cold. My cravings are going up. I'm not losing fat the way that I had wanted to at the point. And so I learned that, yeah, I should probably eat a second meal. And since then I've been doing a meal of, some boiled eggs or meat sticks or something, whatever sounds good, like kind of around, 10 or noon or 2. And then I'll stick with my same dinner and just have whatever satisfying foods until I'm totally stuffed for dinner. But yeah, like I'll say that even though I'm eating 2 meals, I could easily skip a meal if I wanted to. And the timing just does not matter. Like, it doesn't matter. It could be 10 if that's the most convenient time for me. Today it was. Today I had a client at 11. It was a 45-minute drive away from here. So it was convenient for me to eat, 6 or 7 eggs at 10 a.m. and get in the car and drive away. Other times I have clients, I'm full. So like, yeah, I've got to keep working until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock before I can get that first meal in. Or if it comes to be that I'm just so busy, I can skip it. It really is not important. And again, your body is taking extra calories from the fat that you've already stored. So it just kind of keeps humming along. Like, a really great example. I love this analogy. One of my clients shared with me. He said that before he found low carb, hunger was a bully. It didn't matter what he was doing, what he was working on. The bully would come up and kick him out of his chair and say, like, you gotta hang out with me now. Like, I don't care what you're doing. And now hunger has become more of a friend that will like lightly tap him on the shoulder and just say, hey dude, what's up? Like, I'm here. Are you busy? Like, you want to eat? No, like I'll come back. Like, I can come back and that'll be fine. I think he stole it from somebody, but I really love that analogy of how hunger is so different, where most people know hunger as hanger, and it's such an immediate problem that you have to deal with right then, versus like, I feel the rumble in my stomach. Yes. Am I hungry? Probably a little bit. Do I need to eat right this very second? Absolutely not. And it's so freeing, especially, you understand with like personal training, when you're taking clients back to back to back, where I needed the meal preps, I needed the granola bars or the yogurt, fruit snacks or whatever the hell I had prepped for the week. You just don't need them. It's just so much easier and saves so much time on the meal prep. You guys describing literally like your entire Sundays were meal prep. It was centered around meal prep, the whole thing. And yeah, like so many people out there are trying to do that. It's for the birds, man. Like, you don't need to do that.
100%. Yeah, we call it hangry. You don't want to be around someone when they're hangry.
Absolutely not. No, they're gremlins.
One of my favorite leadership speakers, John Maxwell, said, "You don't ever compete with food or with having to go to the bathroom. If someone's hungry or has to do or has to take care of business, not a nice person to be around." Yeah.
Both of those. Good call. I like that.
And you're so spot on with how it simplifies your life too. I mean, like just you talking about your schedule, it's like, you can't be on a high carbohydrate diet and make it, dude. Like, you wouldn't be able to do what you do. You wouldn't be able to, first of all, have the podcast and the results and the client testimonials and everything that you do. But just to be able to handle your workload, for me, it's the same way, man. I've been doing 1 meal a day for I think about 2 weeks straight now. I was going back and forth between 1 meal a day and 2 meals a day. And we're just busy, man. I don't have time to eat 2 meals a day. I got time for 1 meal right now. But that meal is all that I need. And I'm stuffed. And I'm not, and I'm fine until my next day. And I'm nailing all my goals just by following my own satiety signals, just like how you teach.
Yep. I love that. And I love that you use the term stuffed and satiety, because those things are so different than fullness. People can eat a quote unquote healthy diet of a salad that has some chicken in it and maybe a light dressing. And yeah, you are going to get full. At some point, you're going to say, okay, I've had enough for lunch. I'm full. Mm-hmm. And then what happens 3 hours later? Like, that person's head is on the desk. They are exhausted. They're starving. They're having that 3 p.m. crash that everybody recognizes. People need to take naps or grab a cup of coffee or, go to the break room for the sugar and all the treats, which are being provided for free by all of these, employers all over the place. And it's like, your fullness created that hunger dip that you don't recognize a few hours later. That was the cause of that, because you were not satiated. Satiation is me going to a Brazilian steakhouse. Literally, dude, it was a few weeks ago. Literally,
Yeah,
like
now we're talking.
oh, dude, they know us by name there. Like they know where we're coming. But I had
us too, man.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And you think you're going to be there for 6 hours, but like you get to this point, I had a piece of ribeye in my mouth, and I couldn't finish it. Like I couldn't chew it anymore. And it's like the hormones that tell you that you're hungry and you need to eat are very strong and they're very powerful. But you know what? So are the other hormones that tell you you are satiated, you're done. You can't chew. You can't get another morsel in if you tried. You have an aversion to the food that 5 minutes ago was amazing. It was so delicious. You don't want to see it anymore. You don't want to look at it or smell it. Like it's amazing how powerful those hormones are.
Yeah. And it's like night and day too. If you're sticking to a species appropriate diet, which again is primarily muscle meat from ruminant animals, and you're not consuming plant products that are loaded with oxalates and fiber and then things that are throwing off your leptin levels, throwing off your satiety signals. If you're sticking to a species appropriate diet, it's like night and day. Bam, you're satisfied, but you're not full and bloated. And because I used to go through broccoli and through Brussels sprouts like it was like it was out of style when I was dieting for my first couple of shows, because that's what all the other bodybuilders were doing. And I thought that the more fiber, the better. You got to stay full. You got to stay satiated. You got to stay satiated. Man, that's just like, it's not worth the amount of trips to the bathroom doing it that way.
Totally. Just the gas that you would get all the time is just unbearable. Yeah, it was terrible. And here's a funny example. I'm sure you can relate to this. Like in all the bathrooms in my house, I used to have a book or a magazine by the toilet. I would have it there because I'd sit down and go number 2 and I'd have time to read. I don't have any of those anymore because you sit down and it's like 5 seconds later, you're like, okay, that's over. I'm done. Like you're creating so much less waste and bulk that just has to like tear through you and build up and causes way more problems than it helps. You just kind of go and it like comes out really easy. And yeah, it takes no time to go number 2. It's crazy.
Bart K says that he's one and done first thing in the morning without effort, like clockwork every single day, and it never changes. And that's exactly the same way that I am too. Perfect. Is that how regular you are?
Yeah, it is. It's such a small volume, and I often get when somebody's starting with a carnivore diet, they'll complain to me and say like, "Man, I feel good, but I'm really constipated. This kind of sucks. Like I haven't gone number 2 in days." And you're like, "Okay, but let's talk about that. Like, what are the symptoms of constipation that you're feeling?" And they'll be like, "Well, I don't know." Like, I'll ask, like, "Do you feel backed up?" And they're like, "Well, no, I guess I don't feel backed up. I just haven't gone in 2 days. Like, where is all this food going?" And it's like, you're eating the exact right amount of the food that's giving you the nutrients that your body is actually using. Yeah. Don't feel bad that you have quote unquote constipation. Anymore. Exactly. Right. That's not constipation. You're just, there's so much less waste product that needs to come out when you're eating what you call exactly rightly a species appropriate diet.
Yeah. We should probably stop shit talking here in a little bit.
Heyo.
But when I changed my son's diaper back when he was in diapers and he had eaten cashews earlier, I looked in the diaper and I looked at the cashews and I was like, they look the exact same as when he ate them. Yeah. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, man, okay, that kids never want to eat fruit. They never want to eat vegetables. They always want to eat meat. It's like, maybe our kids are trying to tell us something that their bodies are.
They know. Yeah, they're so smart. They know. And we were smart as kids too. Like, did you like broccoli growing up? Like, no, of course not. You don't even like it as an adult unless it has butter and salt and whatever cream sauce on it to begin with. Like, that's the only reason anybody should eat a vegetable is get a vehicle of all the other stuff that your body truly needs. It's why kids spit up vegetables. They don't taste good. The bitter taste is a sign that this is not food for you. This is not food for you. Fruit tastes sweet. Like you can have that occasionally because it's around occasionally. It's not generally available the way it is today. 365 days out of the year, you can buy a mango in Toronto. You know what I mean? Like it's a totally different context.
Right. And the fruit today isn't even the same as the fruit that it was back then. I mean, back in hunter and gatherer days, muscle meat from ruminant animals available all year round. It's not available in 5 convenient meals a day. It's available whenever you kill an animal. That's when you eat it. And so it just makes sense, biologically speaking, that we would we'd eventually gravitate towards 1 or 2 meals a day, which is what it seems like most carnivores tend to do.
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skullbellz TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. Our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes. Your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skullbellz TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
Am I correct in understanding that when you become fully fat adapted, that it helps keep muscle glycogen fuller throughout the day?
Yes. Yes, because you again, it's a question of how much can you store and how much can you make versus how much are you using. So yeah, think of it like your fuel tank. Like if you're using lots of fuel, then it's going to run out sooner. If you switch, to like a hybrid or an electric, you're not using as much of the fuel. You're using more of the electrical system, which is replacing itself in a different way and is a different engine, which would be like fat burning. It's so much more efficient that you're saving a lot of the glycogen. So you're going to have more of it available all the time. Mm-hmm. Plus the way that most people think about gluconeogenesis that we mentioned before, a process of creating the carbohydrates that your body needs at that time. Well, if you're not fat adapted, the amount of carbohydrates that you are going to need is going to be very high. And one of the ways that your body uses gluconeogenesis is the breakdown of protein, which if you need a high amount of carbohydrates, you might be breaking down a high amount of protein, and part of that might be coming from muscle to be able to give you the glycogen you need. If you change that equation and say, okay, now I only need a very small amount, not only are you saving a lot more of the glycogen, but if your body needs that gluconeogenesis, it's going to be such a lower amount that it even needs, because that's not the body's primary fuel source.
Right. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. The weirdest thing that I noticed, touching back to what we were talking about before recording, about this last prep, is just that my muscle bellies are full all the time. Like I just never go flat. Like I don't feel like I have a pump all the time, but they're never flat like they were when I was competition dieting before. Everything for this prep, for stepping on stage at the Open Natural here in 3 days, I almost felt like I was shortchanging myself, like I wasn't training hard enough. And I'm like, here we are, we're ready. And yet I don't feel starved. I don't feel malnourished, and I don't feel flat.
Yeah. No, it's to the point of like, when you're eating that species appropriate diet, when you get the diet right, it's not like one thing improves at the cost of two others. Like when we kind of started telling people in the 60s that like cholesterol is causing heart attacks, you need to reduce the amount of saturated fat that you're eating, you need to eat polyunsaturated fat. That was very specific advice for heart attacks, mostly for middle-aged men, had nothing to do with women or children. It was for the prevention of heart attacks. Not only are heart attacks still the #1 killer in the United States, but now we have an obesity problem and a diabetes problem and a depression and anxiety problem. And we have all these other problems that we didn't have back then. We were trying to fix one thing. Don't you think we would have, at the very least, fixed that very one thing for that cohort of middle-aged men who still die of heart attacks more than anything else? That tells you that not only do we not fix the original problem, but we just created 30 others that are, possibly worse. That's not the right path. Like, that did not work. If we do the opposite, it's what both of us notice when people try carnivore. It's like you go from that progression that we always talk about, the standard American, that sucks. I heard about paleo. Let's try paleo. Great. Got about shove crappy processed food out of my diet. Let's take it further and go keto. I lost a bunch of fat. I feel a little better. I didn't really need as many like nuts and seeds as I thought I did, but still not feeling my best. Go carnivore. Yeah. Go carnivore. Oh, dude, I don't miss them at all. You go from low carb keto to carnivore. That's the magic. In fact, one consultation I had last week, as I'm describing some of these things to a first time, a client who's trying carnivore, he said like, wow, this really sounds like magic. Like you're telling me my sleep apnea could go away and that I don't have a 3 p.m. crash. I take a nap every single afternoon. I might not need that. It's like, that's what you get when you optimize the diet for what we are supposed to be eating. It's not just that you lose fat, you feel good, your brain works. My anxiety went away, dude. I would poke check every few months at someone in hockey, and my shoulder would just kind of hurt, and I wouldn't understand why, but it would be several days. It's just like, my shoulder would bug me. That hasn't happened since I've gone carnivore. Stephen Thomas brought something up that I'd even forgotten about. He said when I interviewed him that his chronic athlete's foot went away when he went carnivore, and he said that. And I was like, oh yeah, like I used to have chronic athlete's foot. I don't have athlete's foot. I never get it anymore. My skin gets really tan in the sunshine. Like I never burn. Like all of these magical things happen. Everything gets better. Sexual function gets better. The mental clarity that we talked about, all there was reversal of these chronic diseases, it gets better. It's such a cool thing that when you can get somebody on the right diet, everything optimizes. It's not just like the one thing.
Remember how I love how you just brought up your own consultations. Remember how I told you how before we started recording how this is like a free consultation for me?
I do. I use you for the same thing.
Okay, this is still free, right?
It is. I'm not charging you. You didn't charge me to interview you earlier today, so we're on the level.
Okay, bro, just making sure we're on the same page because I want to ask you a question now. Like okay, what you just said is a big light bulb moment here. So I had plantar fasciitis and a stress fracture on both feet. More so on my right foot. I dropped a several $1,000-pound piece of exercise equipment on my foot without wearing shoes when we were moving it. That was a terrible idea. That was very, very stupid. Put me in the hospital for a couple of days. Thank God I had my emotional support dog with me because I was petting her like the entire time and praying. But I was like, man, did I just F my entire family because I put all my eggs in these bodybuilding competitions, and I know that this was going to be where we took our diet and our coaching after this. And if I can't do these shows, this is going to be catastrophic. So like that's kind of where I was at. Anyway, that and then transitioning into deciding to run a marathon at the start of the year. I just took on way too much mileage too fast, man. Way too much mileage, and it was. And not only that, it was hard to stick to my diet too because it was just that chronic cardio too. So it really, so my satiety signals were never really under control. And I think everything happens for a reason. I think that God may have used that injury as a way to have me take a closer look at the diet and a closer look at my overall health and the big picture. And so when I was forced to stop running because my feet hurt so bad, it got to the point to where basically it felt like my feet were just both getting stabbed by knives the entire time that I'm running is the best way to explain it. It couldn't even move. Yeah. And a 200-pound man running a marathon is not maybe the best health decision. Yeah. And if you do, you should start slow and actually train properly. Anyway, since I went 100% meat based, it was kind of around March. That's really when I started throwing out all the fiber and all the vegetables and everything after consulting with Bart Kay and with Stephen Thomas and with a lot of these with these influencers that are advocates of a species appropriate diet. It's gone, man. It is 100% gone. I did not think it was going to heal this fast. Carly, one of my clients that ran the Boston Marathon, she's run lots of marathons. My dad's run marathons. Everybody was telling me that these injuries were going to take years to fix, and they're gone. And I go on runs right now without any pain whatsoever. Yeah. Do you think that the carnivore diet is may have been a contributing factor in healing it?
Contributing factor, I think, is a good way to say it. Is that the one thing that cured everything and fixed everything? Probably not. Contributing factor, I've seen it happen too many times to say no. To not say no, excuse me. I would absolutely say that, yes, that would be a contributing factor. And I'll give you a few examples. Like my wife does work where she does releases on myofascial tissue. So people with shoulder pain, back pain, she works a lot with people with plantar fasciitis, and she'll apply pressure in certain areas while people move in certain ways and stretch. And it opens up tissue to create more room in other parts of the body so that people can get out of pain. And it's like, is the diet going to fix everything? No, but her people who try a low carbohydrate or carnivore diet, they don't need as many sessions. They heal way faster. And I also see the same thing in the mental health space. Like we've had several, mental health counselors on our show. Nicole Laurent is up in kind of your area of the world as well. She's, I understand you guys moved to Montana. She's in Washington, but she does, mental health treatments with people. And it's like, she's not saying that a carnivore diet is going to fix everybody's mental issues. It's an adjunct. Her therapy literally works way better when somebody's already eating the very best diet that they can be eating. The mind will calm down and respond to the treatments way better. There's been 2 separate times in my life where I picked up a formal meditation practice. And one of the times is back in 2014. I was at least eating some fat, but I was nowhere near keto, low carb, carnivore, was not even close. And I did it again during the pandemic when things were a little bit more stressful. And I can tell you, maybe it's age or maturity, or maybe I had experience with it before. And so maybe it was easier the second time, but it was far easier the second time. And I strongly believe that a big component of that was my diet. Eating a carnivore diet along with the meditation practice, I think worked better. And so between giving yourself some rest, eating the most nutrient dense foods, and eliminating all the potential harmful foods that could have been contributing to that, I think is a big deal.
Yeah, Jonathan Griffiths, the composition consultant in the UK, his back injury is so bad. We just recorded our last session of Carnivore Coaches Corner last night, and I'm glad that it's an audio only podcast, because the dude was just in pain the entire time, talking, and that guy can't even function if he gets off the carnivore diet. He has to be on it for a lot of therapeutic reasons, and that's one of them. Also, I can totally relate to the anxiety aspect of it too. It's tremendously helped my anxiety since removing all the other plants, particularly carbohydrates though. And I get business anxiety just like you do. I mean, like, I push myself until I can't think anymore, and you push yourself until you can't think anymore. And if you're a creative dude that's in business for yourself, like that's just a recipe for anxiety. But some people are just wired that way, and that's and that's how they have to live, right?
Yeah, that's right. And to have that like magically drop out to be replaced by this feeling of calm, and you appreciate your surroundings much more. You're so much more grateful. You feel connected, especially to things in the outdoors. It's like, it's really wonderful. Yeah, it's totally worth staying on the diet.
And then it also from the therapeutic aspect of it makes intermittent fasting so much easier. You eventually become an intermittent faster by default, which is why I'm actually not a fan of intermittent fasting. Whenever somebody says, do you recommend intermittent fasting? I say, no, get to a species appropriate diet and let your body tell you when to eat, because your body will eventually tell you, probably, usually what I see, unless someone's just like a hard gainer and a very active athlete, like Lily Kane, for example. It's like she's very, 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 very small lady. It's like for her, it just doesn't really work that well. For me, love intermittent fasting, 1 or 2 meals a day the rest of my life, baby. But the benefits that I get from fasting, especially towards the end of it, that's when I have some of my best meditation experiences. That's when that's when I can really dive into the Bible and understand it 10 times better. And if I'm eating 5 meals a day, I can't do it. I'm not even kidding. I can't do it. But to get to that level, to relax, to forget about the things that are stressing me out, and to meditate or to pray or whatever, that and some of my most creative thoughts and some of my and some of the best just conversations, best podcasts I'll record are towards the end of a fast, when it's been a while since I've eaten anything. And I just can't do it if I have carbs in my diet. I'm just hungry all the time.
It's just like our mutual friend, Robert Sykes. Like, it's savage. You become a savage. When you eat the right way, you are savage. That doesn't mean you're a jerk or an asshole or anything. It just means like you are hungry. your body is looking for nutrients now. If you missed out on a hunt and then the next day felt like crappy and sluggish and were less likely to catch prey the next day than you were the first day, that wouldn't work. Like, we wouldn't have evolved with that trait. Like, we have this magical state that we can get into where the body is producing alternate forms of energy from the stored fat that we're burning in the form of fatty acids and ketones. And the body runs on that, and it really prefers that. And so you experience this sharpness of your mind and this calm focus. And yeah, you can get things done. And
calm focus. That's a very accurate word. I'm sorry. That's very good.
No, it's great. It's like you're the lion on the hunt. Like, you're alert, you're aware. Again, it doesn't mean that you're, a jerk and you're trying to force other people around to get your way. It's just that you feel in the zone. You're right where you should be to be able to find prey if you needed to. And most people, it's so sad to consider that they're eating so many ultra processed foods that have tons of seed oils and processed refined carbohydrates. They might go their entire life. And besides, as a child, as a baby being breastfed, they might not ever experience what it's like to feel that type of energy. And it sucks. It's too bad.
Totally. So you're an endurance athlete as well. I imagine that you're probably fasted like for quite some time before. You don't like load up on a keto brick or like a bunch of fatty meat or anything before doing a long distance sport.
Yeah, good question. And long distance athlete, endurance athlete is very, very generous. Like, when I go on bike rides, like I did this morning, like they're typically like 20 miles, 25 miles. Like, I'm not doing any kind of like exertion over 2 hours, certainly. So yeah. And that said, like, if I'm only going out for, an hour and a half, and that's kind of what I like to do for my bike rides, there's no need to take on any type of energy on board. I could have a keto brick. I wouldn't really bother me, but I don't need it. I can just go out with nothing. And I do feel better fasted. Like I said, I could eat if I wanted to, and I would get through and it would be fine. But I think once you're adapted to this way of living, you understand that exercise, even, anaerobic exercise like hockey. I don't like to eat before hockey, and that's a highly anaerobic exercise that really jacks your heart rate. And I prefer all of that in the fasted state.
Yeah. After hockey games, would you always go out to the team with the team and like pig out at the meals and everything afterward, or did you need like an hour for your central nervous system to settle down before your appetite hit you?
No, you at least got to go out to the parking lot, right? And have a few drinks, like talk shit on the other team or your own teammates. I think a lot of people don't realize that about hockey, is you're giving your own boys way more shit than you're giving the other team. But no, I'm usually okay after that kind of thing. But I think I understand the question. And yeah, it's just understanding that, like, you've got this, the fight or flight state that we kind of talked about of like performance. And you also have this like rest and digest. And so it's nice. The pattern that you were describing with work is like, yeah, I'm going to wake up with energy. I'm going to get my work done. There's a point in my day where I'm like, okay, I just literally was turned on for the last like 12 hours, 14 hours, however long your day is. It's done. Like, the laptop needs to close. It's time to eat. Now let me rest and, do whatever it takes to kind of wind down at the end of the night. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they call that mindful eating. And that's kind of the space that I need to be too, to be able to identify those satiety signals. I can't, I can't go, okay, I got 5 minutes. Great. Let's grab something to eat and then go into this next meeting. No, like, I'm going to be trashed the next meeting if I do that, totally. But if I wait until the end of the day and just go, okay, everything's done, whew, time to feast, that's when we relax. That's when my wife knows, don't talk to him. He's going to be reading his Bible and just like chowing down on some steak for a while.
That sounds great.
Okay. Couple more things. I totally respect your time, and so I don't want to take too much of it, but what do you eat in a typical day and why?
Yeah, great question. So my first meal of the day is going to be typically eggs. And so if it's during the week, normally I'm just every 2 or 3 days, I'm taking my Instant Pot and making an entire batch of 2 dozen, kind of like, I like them like soft boiled eggs. And at the beginning of my day, I'll take those out of the fridge and it could be anywhere from about 6 to typically 10 to 11 eggs. That's just dictated by hunger. Satiety signals definitely work that way, where it's like, yeah, like some days I'll keep eating the eggs and they still sound good. So I'll have another, have another, have another. Other days I get to like 5 or 6 and I just, for whatever reason, I have like palate fatigue over eggs and I stop, and that's it for that meal. My dinners, I really like to focus on red meat, and I really like to focus on what you kind of said about intuitive eating or mindful eating. I think that's true intuitive or mindful eating is like when you're only selecting the proper foods. Yes, you can eat intuitively. And there's going to be some days where some foods sound really good and other days where some foods don't sound very good. And you can pay attention to those signals. If you told me to intuitively eat and I could eat everything at a grocery store or eating out, I would choose pie and I would choose, cookies or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't intuitively eat, but when I eliminate all that and just have the meat that sounds good, I just think what sounds good to me today. So recently it's been steak and eggs I'll have at night. For some reason in the summertime, I crave more, I think like pure protein. And I like to incorporate like chicken breast, where normally I don't normally have a lot of chicken breast. Twice a year, salmon will sound amazing. And then the rest of the year, salmon will not sound amazing. And you just kind of go by what sounds good on that day. And I recommend my clients have a few different options on hand because you never really know what your body's going to tell you. But if you got some options, you can kind of think like, okay, does pork belly sound good today? Does ground beef sound today? Maybe burger patties, it's just, that's a typical thing for me. And I don't count or track anything. I just eat until I am very satiated and I stop and do it again the next day.
100%. That's beautiful. Do you learn a lot from your clients, from your own clients in terms of intuitive eating? Like, wow, this person's eating this, and that, like, and why do you feel like you're craving that? And then like, do you have conversations like that with your clients? And
that's a great question, dude. I kind of guess that maybe I don't ask as many why questions because I don't know that I'll ever know the answer. Like we're always learning about this kind of stuff. We're finding ways to track things that are better. We're getting better with blood work and that sort of thing. And I like all that stuff, but I also, the longer I've done this, the more I realize that like it gets really complicated, and to really know what's truly going on by understanding certain values that were taken on a certain day, or why it was, what was the specific nutrient, or what was that thing that you were after in salmon? I don't know that I'd ever even know that question or understand that question. I kind of look at it the way like, somebody like Dr. Ben Bickman looks at it, also highly religious. It's like God gave us, proteins and fats together in a package. Let me just eat those that sound good. And if I feel good, I'm probably doing okay. This is the way they were set up for us. They did not come in packages and boxes and bags and cans in nature. Like that's not how they're given. We don't get protein and carbohydrates together. You don't get fat and carbohydrates together unless you're talking like dairy and breast milk. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess just the longer I do this, the less I am asking the why questions and more just like, hey, if that's what you're craving, go for it and keep eating that food until you no longer crave it.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the reference to protein and fat being in the same package. So since you brought that up, I thought you might get a kick out of this. This should be every carnivore's favorite verse. Deuteronomy 12:20. When the Lord your God enlarges your territory that he has promised you, and you say, I want to eat meat because you have a strong desire to eat meat, you may eat meat whenever you want.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I grew up Mormon. I live in the Salt Lake Valley, so I grew up Mormon. And Ben Bickman is also Mormon, and he shared a scripture from the Book of Mormon that says something about a group of people like didn't have access to fruit, and so all they had was they had meat and the milk of their mothers, and they thrived and felt really good, or something like that. It was like a really good like carnivore scripture.
Okay, since we're on this topic, man, there's one more that you'll like
Nice.
too. Because this one I almost wondered if it was sarcastic when I read it. Anybody listening? Acts 17:11. So if we say something that's like an opinion or something from the scripture, that's my way of saying go search the scriptures for yourself and double check and make sure that I'm make sure that I'm on point. But yeah, Proverbs. Here we go. 15:17 says, "Better a meal of vegetables where there is love than a fattened calf with hatred."
Huh, nice.
Almost saying that hatred is so bad that you're better off eating vegetables.
That's exactly how I interpreted that. Yeah, that's exactly how I interpreted that. That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, I guess I'm on the right track, I hope.
Nice.
Okay, last thing. That Brazilian steakhouse, dude. That is, Brazilian steakhouses are I would have to say is hands down the coolest dining experience on the planet. I don't think anything touches it, man. So when you take Bethany to a Brazilian steakhouse, what's like the number one item on the menu that you have to get when you go there?
Picanha, no question.
I was gonna say the same thing. It's the best.
You didn't even have to finish the question. The picanha for sure is great.
Yeah.
And as part of my religious upbringing, I did spend 2 years living in a foreign country. We do a mission. You're sent out somewhere in the world, and for 2 years you talk to people about the religion and try to get people baptized or whatever. And I was fortunate enough to be sent to Brazil, and I was sent to the south of Brazil, which is more kind of like the German culture. But yeah, I spent 2 years of my life in the area where like this is the best beef you will ever find. Like the stories of the Argentinian soccer team taking like 50,000 pounds of beef from Argentina to the World Cup where they smoked everybody. Like those things are real. Like going down to Brazil, the best food, the best meat I've ever had, the best picanha I've ever had. It's a top sirloin, but we cut the fat cap off where they keep it on. And so you get this like perfect combination of like steak with a little bit of salt. It's a good beefy flavor with the fat on the end is absolutely just delectable. And then another thing about intuitive eating, and when I was in Brazil, you learn to eat lots of kind of different things, and so chicken hearts would be a big thing down there. And so
chicken hearts are great, man.
Dude, they're so good. They're great.
So underrated.
And that's a good way for me to know, like, am I getting enough organ meats? I'll go to the Brazilian steakhouse, and sometimes they'll sound absolutely delicious, and I'll eat like 30 of them, eat like easily. And sometimes I'm like, come and go. Maybe I'll have like 2 or 3. And so I think that's a way that we can balance those things. But yeah, if you're asking me what the favorite food at a Brazilian steakhouse is, it's no question. It's the picanha. Yeah.
Oh, hands down, man. Yeah. Especially my favorite is I mean, I don't know, dude. Like the edge with the crispiness, like that's good. But then you get the fat, you get the cap in the middle because, like you said, like with our sirloin cuts, you get sirloin at the store. It doesn't have that fat cap, and so when I found out that it was a sirloin, it didn't make any sense. I was like, what? But yeah, our local butcher that we go to actually has picanha. I've never seen it at a butcher before, so we made that for my birthday.
Hard to find
for a few weeks ago. Yeah,
it's hard to find. Yeah. Wow. Chicken hearts are a little easier. If you're looking for something easy to grill, you can find chicken hearts for like 99 cents a pound with a really simple marinade, like olive oil, maybe a little bit of vinegar or whatever seasonings you like. And those come out great. Or you could just keep it real carnivore and just do a little bit of salt, and those come out amazing too. But yeah, really good food there.
Yeah, it's been a while since I made chicken hearts. What we would do is let's see, one of my Russian clients made them because like apparently it's like a thing, a family recipe in their family. So I just kind of like made it carnivore based off of their recipe. But yeah, I mean nothing too fancy. Just I think we just boiled it. You have to boil it a couple times and get some of the unpleasant taste out, and then also just salt is really all it needed.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Casey. Thank you so much for your time on our show. If you're listening, book a consultation with this guy. Seriously, where can people go to find more information about you, sir?
Well, thank you very much, Colt. It's been such an honor to, get to be on that episode with you on the Carnivore-a-thon, and it's been really fun to chat today. I've really enjoyed it, and I really love your content. You guys do a super good job. So yeah, the easiest place to find us is our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. You'll find our podcast on that website. We release 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, with sometimes we do some bonus content on the weekends. You'll find out I'm very inconsistent, but we have a blog that I haven't updated in a very long time. You can find that there. You can find our social media stuff there. But really, like you said, we do offer free 30-minute consultations. Anybody around the world can book with us. And like I say, as a call to action on the end of my podcast, like whether you want to ask questions about carnivore, whether you want to just bounce ideas off each other, or even if people just want to like say hi, introduce themselves, like just book a time. Let's chat. We're not going to force you down anything. We might, discuss some things and hopefully work with people to help them get to their goals. So that again is myboundlessbody.com.
Sounds like you got nothing to lose. Yeah. Sounds great.
30 minutes of your time.
That's right. Thanks so much, Casey. God bless you. And let's catch up again.
Thank you very much. I would very much look forward to that.
Hey, podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this entire interview with Casey Ruff. If you found this helpful or entertaining, please pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Your ratings and reviews got us to where we are at. If you are not subscribed, please do that so we can continue to grow the channel and share the knowledge organically. Really appreciate the support, everybody. Couple quick things before we sign off is Client Spotlight. This is from Ingrid Dubert. She would like to say, I absolutely loved the vibe and atmosphere of this show. The perfect first show for me. Respect and gratitude to Colton Taylor for coaching me through a big win. So at age 65, Ingrid placed first in Women's Bikini Masters and third in Women's Bikini Open. This is a woman that I admire and respect not just as an athlete, but also as an accomplished motivational speaker herself. Speaking of new beginnings, she's just getting started too. She's pretty active on social media, and so will likely record a podcast retelling the experience of what her next plans are. So congratulations, Ingrid, on that once again. All right, her Instagram is Jim_Diva1. And our podcast review of the week is from Doug Wright in Paris, California. He says, I'd love to hear strong men and women of God. It is so, that is 5 O's. So refreshing. God bless you all. Thank you very much for that, Doug. All right, one last thing. If you haven't heard about our new podcast with Jonathan Griffiths and Mark Ennis, it's called Carnivore Coach's Corner. So we three meatheads collaborate weekly to discuss listener questions, frequently asked questions at our own one-on-one consultations, and trending topics related to the carnivore diet and hypertrophy training. I really believe it's the future of natural bodybuilding. I do. If you listen to that show, you'll find out why. And if you're a fan of the low-carb lifestyle or just getting into it, you can find us by searching Carnivore Coach's Corner on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Anchor, Overcast, Pocket Cast, and probably some other ones that I'm not familiar with. So Anchor is a really good podcast platform. Let me put it that way. All right. Thanks again for tuning in, y'all. God bless, and catch you later this week on episode 170. And I'm going to leave you with this. Be steadfast, immovable, always excelling in the Lord's work, knowing that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That's 1 Corinthians 15:58.